Some dolls are meant to be played with, some are meant to be displayed, and some, the worst kind, are meant to breathe. When 17-year-old Clara discovers a porcelain doll in her late grandmother's attic, she thinks it's simply another antique curiosity. But this doll exhales at night. It shifts when no one's looking, and it seems to know her name. The first time Clara heard the doll breathe, she was alone. Rain whispered against the attic window, casting shadows across stacks of boxes and moth-eaten furniture. She had been rummaging through her grandmother's things when she found it. A porcelain doll wrapped in brittle paper, its face pale as moonlight, its gray eyes faintly open. At first it looked lifeless, fragile, like every other antique in the house. Then, as she brushed the dust off its cheek, she felt a warm puff of air against her palm. Not a draft, not her imagination, a breath. She jerked back, heart hammering. The attic smelled of cedar and something else. Something damp, like earth after rain. When she lifted the doll again, its tiny chest rose and fell as if it had lungs. Outside, thunder cracked. The old house groaned, and deep inside the doll's faintly opened mouth, something like a sigh escaped. That was the night Clara learned some heirlooms carry more than memories. Rain hammered the windows like 100 impatient fingers. Clara sat cross, legged on the living room floor, staring at the flickering glow of the television, though she hadn't been watching for the last 15 minutes. Her father had gone out hours ago on another errand that he called important. Since her mother's funeral 6 weeks ago, everything felt important except her. The old house on Haven Street had once been their summer escape. Now it was permanent. The woods smelled of salt water and old varnish, and the wind that blew off the Atlantic rattled the window panes and whispered under the doors. Clara tried to ignore it, but tonight the whispering felt heavier, more like someone breathing very close to her ear. When the front door finally opened, she jumped. Her father's shape filled the doorway, a silhouette against the storm. Water ran off his coat and pooled on the worn floorboards. He was clutching something under his arm, wrapped in brown paper and string. "I brought you something," he said, forcing a smile. His eyes were rimmed with red and his voice sounded like gravel. "Something special." Clara straightened up. "What is it?" "You'll see." He knelt by the coffee table and untied the package with hands that trembled ever so slightly. The paper fell away to reveal an antique doll, maybe 1.5 feet tall, porcelain and cloth, dressed in a faded blue dress with lace trim. Its black hair was glossy and perfect, its glass eyes the pale gray of storm clouds. Clara's breath caught. "She's pretty. She reminded me of your mom's collection." He touched the doll's shoulder almost tenderly. "The man at the shop said she's from Europe, late 1800s. Hand-painted." Clara reached out. The porcelain felt cooler than the air and heavier than it looked. The doll's lips were parted slightly, revealing a faint line of painted teeth. For a second she thought she felt a breath against her palm, but when she blinked the feeling was gone. "I thought you could put it in your room," her father said. "You used to love dolls." "I'm a little old for them now," she murmured, but she carried the doll upstairs anyway. Her bedroom was a cramped square under the eaves, wallpaper peeling in places. She set the doll on her dresser, facing her bed. Its glass eyes caught the glow from the small bedside lamp and reflected it in tiny silver points. Downstairs, her father moved about the kitchen, cupboards opening and closing, his radio playing an old jazz station. Clara lay on the bed with her phone, scrolling through photos of her mother, pretending not to feel the doll's gaze. The storm outside deepened. Somewhere in the house, a door clicked shut on its own. She woke at 2:17 a.m. The house was silent now except for the storm. She turned over and froze. The doll was no longer on the dresser. It was on the chair beside her bed, hands folded neatly on its lap. Her heart thudded hard enough to make her ears buzz. She sat up slowly, clutching the blanket. She hadn't touched it since setting it on the dresser. She was sure. The doll's head was tilted, its mouth slightly open. In the pale moonlight, she thought she saw the chest rise, then fall, as though it had taken a slow breath. Clara flicked on her lamp. The doll sat perfectly still, porcelain gleaming. She swallowed and picked it up, holding it at arm's length. "Stop freaking yourself out," she whispered. She put it back on the dresser and crawled under the covers, but she left the light on. Sleep came in fits. Every time she drifted off, she dreamed of the ocean swallowing the house, of a little girl's hand clutching hers under black water. Morning brought a thin, watery light through the window. Her father was already up, the smell of coffee drifting up the stairs. Clara dressed quickly and went down. "You look pale," he said. "I didn't sleep." He frowned. "Nightmares." She hesitated. "Sort of." The doll moved. He chuckled softly. "You're imagining things, old houses? Storms. They play tricks on your senses. I'm not." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Give it time. We've both been through a lot." Clara didn't push. He barely looked at her anymore. But when she went back upstairs later, the doll was once again on the chair beside her bed. That evening, she FaceTimed her best friend from their old neighborhood, Leela. She angled the camera to show the doll. "That's creepy," Leela said. "Looks like it's staring at you. It moved on its own last night. Get rid of it." Clara laughed nervously. "My dad bought it for me. I can't just throw it away." Leela leaned closer to the camera. "Swear to me it's not breathing." Clara swallowed. "I don't know." That night the storm eased, but the house was even quieter, which somehow felt worse. Clara placed the doll back on the dresser and closed her door tightly. She even put a laundry basket in front of it. As if that could stop something made of porcelain, she stayed up reading under the covers until her eyes ached. Finally, she drifted off. A whisper woke her, soft, like a sigh. "Clara." She sat bolt upright. The room was dim. The moonlight painted long shadows on the floor. The laundry basket was tipped over. The doll sat on the edge of her bed, facing her, hands outstretched. And this time she could hear it, faint but unmistakable, rasping in and out a slow, human-like breath. The next morning she told her father everything. He stared at her for a long time, a coffee cup poised halfway to his lips. "Clara," he began carefully, "I think we need to see someone. A counselor, maybe?" "I'm not crazy. I didn't say you were. Grief does things." She slammed her hands on the table. "Then why is the doll moving?" He rubbed his temples. "I'll move it to the attic tonight. All right?" Clara nodded reluctantly. But when evening came and he went to retrieve it, the doll was already sitting at the bottom of the attic stairs, as if it had been waiting. Later, alone in her room, Clara opened her phone and started recording video, pointing it at the doll now on the dresser. "If you're real," she whispered to the empty air, "then move." She waited. A full minute passed. Then the doll's head turned a fraction, glass eyes sliding toward her. Clara screamed and dropped the phone. The phone clattered to the floor, screen down. Clara's heart thumped so hard she felt it in her throat. She grabbed the phone, hands trembling, and stopped the recording. When she played it back, her breath hitched. The video showed the doll perfectly still on the dresser. No head movement. No whisper. Nothing. "You're losing it," she muttered, pressing her palms to her eyes. Downstairs, she could hear her father moving about the kitchen. She shoved the doll into her closet, shut the door firmly, and pushed a chair against the knob for good measure. She tried to read a book, but the words swam. She kept glancing at the closet, waiting for the knob to turn. She dreamed of her mother again that night. In the dream, her mother was sitting at the foot of the bed, hair dripping seawater, eyes wide and pale. "Don't let it breathe," she whispered, voice bubbling like something underwater. "Don't let it breathe." Clara woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The closet door was open. The doll sat in the middle of the floor, legs outstretched, head tipped to one side. Clara yelped and turned on the lamp. The doll's glass eyes reflected the yellow light, tiny suns in a porcelain sky. She grabbed it, ran to the bathroom, and shoved it under the sink cabinet. Then she locked herself in her room, clutching her blanket until dawn. At breakfast, her father studied her with concern. "You're pale again." "Because I didn't sleep again," she snapped. "Dad, it was out of the closet." "It's moving. Stop." He rubbed his forehead. "You're scaring yourself." "Then explain this." She pulled out her phone and showed him the video she'd tried to capture. But it only showed her screaming at a motionless doll. "Clara," he said softly, "we both need time. Losing your mom." "It's not about Mom," she shouted, then instantly regretted it. His face pinched and he looked down at his coffee. "Sorry," she whispered. I'm scared." He nodded slowly. "I'll take it back to the shop, refund or not." Relief loosened the knot in her chest. "Promise." Promise. That afternoon after school, she ran straight home, half expecting the doll to be waiting on her bed. But the closet door was shut, chair still in place. When her father came in from work, she asked, "Did you take it back?" "I went," he said, "but the shop was closed. Boarded up like it had been that way for years." Clara frowned. "That's impossible. We were just there 2 days ago." "I know," he sighed. "Tonight I'll lock it in the garage. Out of the house." Okay, she whispered. Night fell with a coppery moon rising over the ocean. The wind hissed against the siding. Her father carried the doll to the garage in a cardboard box taped shut. Clara watched from the window, hugging herself. She didn't want to see it again. Not tonight. Not ever. She left her bedroom door open, hoping the hallway light would ease her fear. But the house felt different. Quieter, yet full, like someone was holding their breath in every room. At 100 a.m., she woke to the sound of whispering. A soft, susurrant hiss, not words exactly, but almost. She sat up. The garage was separate from the house. How could she hear it? The whispering grew louder, a tide of sound rushing into her ears. Then she realized it was coming from the vents. She crept to the floor vent near her bed. The whisper rose and fell like a crowd murmuring underwater. She pressed her ear to the metal. For a second, she swore she heard her own name. "Clara?" She scrambled back, heart pounding. Down the hall, her father's door opened. "Clara," he called groggily. She ran to him. "You hear it too?" "Hear what?" "Whispering." He blinked, bleary-eyed. "Go back to sleep." "I don't hear anything." She grabbed his arm. "Please, just listen." He trudged down the hall, crouched by the vent, and listened. After a long moment, he straightened. "Nothing." "You're exhausted, honey." "Let's go back to bed." Clara wanted to scream, but she didn't. She went back to her room, curled into a ball, and covered her ears with the pillow. She must have fallen asleep, because the next thing she knew, something cold brushed her cheek. Her eyes snapped open. The doll lay inches from her face on the pillow. Porcelain fingers splayed across her hair. She shrieked and bolted upright, knocking it to the floor. It landed with a sharp crack but didn't break. Its glass eyes stared up at her. Her father burst into the room. "What happened?" "It's here. It's here," she sobbed, pointing at the doll. His face went white. He picked up the doll, held it out at arm's length, and for the first time Clara saw fear flicker in his eyes. "How did it get here?" he whispered. "You locked it in the garage." "I did." They stared at each other. Then, without another word, he marched downstairs, out into the yard, and hurled the doll into the garbage bin. "Tomorrow," he said, voice trembling, "we're driving to the dump. It's gone." But Clara wasn't convinced. She stood at her window long after he'd gone back inside, staring at the bin. Under the moonlight, she thought she saw the lid bulge. as if something inside was breathing. The following day was a blur of unease. At school, she couldn't focus. She kept glancing at corners, at shadows under desks. Her friend Leela texted, "You okay?" "No," she typed back. "The doll came back last night. Burn it. We're taking it to the dump tomorrow." But when she came home, the bin was empty. Her father swore he hadn't touched it. They searched the yard, the garage, the porch. No doll. That night, the whispering started earlier, around midnight. This time it was clearer. A song voice repeating a phrase she couldn't understand, but which sounded like an old rhyme. She stuffed earbuds in and turned her music up, but she could still hear it faintly underneath, like a second heartbeat. At 200 m, her lamp flickered. She opened her eyes. The doll sat on her desk, hands folded, chest rising and falling in slow, measured breaths. She grabbed her phone, hit record, and whispered, "What do you want?" The doll's mouth opened wider. A soft hiss came out, almost like a word. "Stay." She dropped the phone, ran to her father's room, and shook him awake. "You have to see this!" He stumbled after her, rubbing his eyes. But when they entered her room, the doll was gone. Only her phone lay on the floor, still recording. She played it back, hoping for proof. The screen showed her empty room. No doll, no voice, just static. Her father sat on the bed, looking at her with a mixture of pity and fear. "Clara," he said quietly, "if this keeps happening, we'll get help. Real help." She shook her head violently. "It's not in my head." He hesitated. "Then what is it?" She stared at the empty desk, at the faint outline of dust where the doll had been, and whispered, "It's alive." By the third night, Clara barely recognized herself in the bathroom mirror. Shadows hollowed her eyes, her skin looked gray, her lips cracked. She brushed her teeth slowly, staring at her own reflection while keeping the door propped open, afraid of what might move behind her. Downstairs, her father banged cabinet doors while making tea. He had stopped joking about the doll and now spoke of it only in fragments. He had called the number on the antique shop's receipt again. Disconnected. He had even driven back into town during daylight. The shop's windows were papered over, no sign of life. "I'm sleeping on the couch tonight." He called up to her, "Keep your door open." Clara didn't argue. She felt safer with his presence, even if only one floor below. She placed a Bible, her mother's old one, on the nightstand and lined a circle of table salt around her bed. She knew it was silly, but she'd read somewhere online that salt stopped spirits. Anything was worth trying. The doll was gone. She hadn't seen it since the night before, when it sat on her desk, breathing. The absence felt worse than its presence, like a wolf vanishing into long grass. She fell asleep sometime after midnight. A crash woke her. She bolted upright, scattering salt onto the floor. Her lamp flickered once, twice, then went dark. The room filled with a low rasping sound, unmistakable now, breathing, slow and wet, coming from the closet. "Dad." Her voice cracked. No answer. She reached for her phone. Dead battery. Of course. She slid off the bed, feet crunching salt, and edged toward the closet. Her hand trembled on the knob. She opened it. The doll hung inside from one of her dresses, its porcelain hands wrapped around the hanger as if gripping a noose. Its head rolled slowly toward her, glass eyes gleaming in the darkness. Its mouth opened wider and a thin stream of air hissed out, smelling of rotten seawater. Clara stumbled backward, knocking into her nightstand. The Bible fell to the floor. The doll dropped from the hanger and landed upright on its feet. "Stay away," she whispered. It took a step toward her. Her scream brought her father running. He burst into the room, eyes scanning wildly. "What happened?" "There." She pointed at the doll. It sat on the floor like a normal doll, legs splayed, face blank. He grabbed it by the hair. "That's it," he snarled. He stormed downstairs and out the front door. Clara followed, shaking. At the back of the yard, he yanked open the old storm cellar door. "This is where it stays until morning," he muttered. He hurled the doll down the steps into the dark and slammed the door, bolting it with an iron latch. They went back inside, Clara curled up on the couch, knees under her chin. Her father sat beside her, rubbing his temples. "I'll call Pastor Green tomorrow," he said. "If you're right, and this is whatever, it needs a blessing." She nodded silently. Sometime around 4:00 a.m., the breathing started again. Soft at first, then louder, a ragged inhale and exhale echoing up from the basement vents. Her father's eyes snapped open. He heard it too. They both stood, staring at the floor. The sound of something dragging across concrete came from below, slow and deliberate, like porcelain scraping stone. "Stay here," he whispered. "No," she hissed back, clutching his arm. He grabbed the fireplace poker and crept to the storm cellar door. He unlocked it, lifted it an inch, and froze. A small white hand rested on the underside of the door, fingers splayed, nails scratching the wood. Then it withdrew with a scrape. He slammed it shut and bolted it again, face white as bone. "Get your coat," he said. "We're leaving, now." They drove to the only 24-hour diner in town, parked under the flickering neon sign. Inside, the waitress poured coffee for her father and hot chocolate for Clara. The fluorescent lights made everything feel normal, banal, safe. But Clara's hands still shook. "You saw it?" she whispered. "You saw it move." "I saw something," he admitted, voice hoarse. "That wasn't. I don't know what that was." "Do you believe me now?" He stared into his coffee. "I believe something is happening." They sat in silence until dawn smeared pink across the sky. Then he said, "We're not going back to that house until I find someone who knows what this is. A priest, a psychic, I don't care." Clara felt tears of relief sting her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt like they were on the same side. When they returned, the storm cellar door stood wide open. Muddy prints led up to the kitchen door. Tiny like a child's, but deeper, as if something heavy had pressed them. Inside, the house was freezing. The curtains fluttered in a windless room. On the kitchen table sat the doll, perfectly upright, hands folded, head slightly tilted. But now it wore a new accessory, Clara's mother's pearl necklace. Her father swore under his breath and backed away. "Go to the car," he said. "No," Clara whispered. "It wants us to." He picked up the doll with shaking hands, ripped the necklace from its neck, and hurled the doll against the wall. It hit with a crack but didn't shatter. A thin hairline fracture zigzagged across its face, exposing something dark beneath the porcelain, like ash or dried blood. The doll's mouth opened wider, far wider than before, and a sound came out. A dry, rasping gasp, like a baby's first breath. Her father dropped it, clutching his ear as blood trickled from his nose. "Jet!" he wheezed. "Get out." The doll crawled toward Clara on its hands and knees, movements jerky but fast. She grabbed a pan from the counter and swung, knocking it across the room. It slammed into the cabinets and went still. They bolted out the door, hearts hammering. They sat in the car, doors locked, breathing hard. "We can't stay," she whispered. "I know." He rubbed his temples. "We'll get a hotel. Then tomorrow I'll burn it." Clara shivered. "What if it follows?" He looked at her, eyes bloodshot. "Then God help us." That night in the hotel, she dreamed again of her mother. This time her mother was holding the doll like a baby, stroking its hair. "It breathes because you listen," her mother whispered. "Stop listening." Then her face cracked like porcelain and darkness poured out. Clara woke screaming, waking her father. He held her until she stopped shaking, but he looked as scared as she felt. The next morning he drove back to the house alone with a can of gasoline. "Stay here," he said firmly. "If it's still there, I'll end it." She watched him go, twisting her hands in her lap. Minutes crawled by. Her phone buzzed with a text from him, Doan, coming back. When he returned, he smelled of smoke. "It's gone," he said. "Burned to ash, nothing left." Clara exhaled shakily. "Are you sure?" "I watched it burn." For the first time in days, she felt a fragile thread of hope. Maybe it was over. But that night, as she lay in the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, she heard it again. A faint rasping breath under the mattress. The hotel room was a bland beige box with a humming air conditioner and floral curtains that never closed properly. Yet Clara kept glancing under the bed, as if expecting porcelain fingers to curl out from the shadows. She had hardly slept. Every time she drifted off, the faint rasp of breathing stirred at the edge of her hearing, like waves against a shore she couldn't see. Her father snored lightly in the other bed, one arm thrown across his face. He hadn't mentioned burning the doll again. He hadn't said anything at all about the house, as though silence itself could erase the memories. But Clara felt it still. Whatever they had ignited in gasoline hadn't ended it. She sat at the small desk with her phone and laptop open, fingers poised above the keys. She needed proof. She needed to know what this thing was. She started with what she knew: antique porcelain doll, breathing, haunted, Europe 1800s, thousands of results spilled back, ghost stories, paranormal forums, grainy YouTube videos of supposedly cursed objects. Most of it was junk. But one thread on an old forum made her pause. "The Soul Keeper Dolls of Blackwater Bay," she clicked. The post was dated 2009 and written by someone named Mariner 1890. It described a line of dolls made by a reclusive German craftsman who fled to the American coast in the late 19th century. The dolls were said to be vessels, created to hold fragments of souls for a forbidden ritual. Several were lost in a shipwreck off Blackwater Bay. Her pulse quickened. Their town sat right on that bay. Scrolling further, she found a blurry black and white photo of a doll almost identical to hers. Same pale gray eyes, same faintly open mouth. "These dolls do not just sit," the post warned. "They draw breath from the living." She copied the image and sent it to Leela. "Ever seen this?" she typed. Leela responded almost instantly. "That looks EXCTLY like yours, BTF. "Yeah. Are you still hearing it?" breathed. Clara hesitated. "Yes. Leela, you have to destroy it." "Clara, we tried. Burned it." "Lila and..." "Clara, it's not gone." Leela, holy shit. "Clara, I'm going to find out who made it." By breakfast, her father had woken up. He watched her at the laptop with bleary eyes. "What are you doing?" "Research," she said, keeping her voice steady. "If we know what it is, we can stop it." He sat across from her with his coffee. "A Soul Keeper doll. German, late 1800s. The guy who made it drowned off Blackwater Bay." He rubbed his jaw. "Clara, I'm serious. Look." She showed him the forum post. He scanned it, expression unreadable. "This is some anonymous post from 15 years ago. It's more than we had before," she snapped. "It explains why it keeps coming back. It's not just haunted. It's built to hold something." He exhaled slowly. "All right. Suppose you're right. What then?" "Then we find out how to send it back." Clara convinced him to drive to the county library. The library smelled of damp paper and lemon cleaner, a strangely comforting smell after days of fear. Rows of microfilm machines glinted under dim lights. At the front desk sat an elderly man in a sweater vest. His name tag read, "Mr. Harlan, Local History." "Excuse me," Clara said. "Do you know anything about old dolls from Blackwater Bay? Late 1800s. His eyebrows lifted. "That's a very specific question." She showed him the photo on her phone. His face went still. "Where did you get that?" "It belonged to someone we knew," she lied. "We're trying to trace its history." Mr. Harlan adjusted his glasses and gestured toward a back room. "Come with me." He led them to a table stacked with brittle newspapers and old maritime records. "You're talking about Dieter Baumann," he said. "A craftsman from Bremen. I came here in 1888. Some say he practiced, well, unholy things. Folks called him a soul smith. He made dolls for grieving parents." claiming they could preserve a piece of the deceased child. He shook his head. A con, most likely. Or not, Clara murmured. Harlan continued. In 1890, he boarded a steamer bound for Europe but never arrived. Ship went down in a storm off the coast. Many bodies never recovered. Some of his creations washed ashore over the years. Where? Clara asked. Anywhere the currents took them. The bay is littered with wreckage. Do you know how to destroy them? She asked softly. His eyes darkened. If you truly have one, you should get rid of it. We tried. Then pray. He hesitated. There's a legend. They say the dolls hold the last breath of a dying child. If you breathe into them willingly, they can bind to you. If not, they try to take it. That's why people hear them breathe. Her father shifted uncomfortably. That's superstition. Harlan gave him a grave look. Maybe, but some legends have teeth. Mr. Harlan disappeared into the stacks and returned with a thin ledger wrapped in cloth. This was recovered from a salvage in 1923, he said. Bauman's shipping manifest. The last entry lists a Clara spelled with a K. Does that name mean anything? Clara's stomach turned cold. That's my name, he nodded. Could be a coincidence. Could be fate. She stared at the faded ink. Next to her name, a note read in German, for the child yet to come. Vessel prepared. What does that mean? She whispered. Her father took the ledger from her trembling hands and snapped it shut. It means we're leaving. As they turned to go, Harlan grabbed Clara's wrist. If it wants you, it won't stop, he said softly. Salt and prayers won't save you. You must return it to the water it came from, or the soul inside will take yours. Return it to the water, she repeated. Yes. Before the next full moon, she pulled her hand away, unsettled by the urgency in his eyes. Back in the car, her father drove in silence, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Did you see the ledger? She said finally. It had my name. How can that be a coincidence? He kept his eyes on the road. I don't know. But I don't want you near that house again. We have to go back, she said. If it's still there, we have to take it to the bay. That's the only way to stop it. No, he said sharply. This ends now. We'll find another way. Clara stared out the window, jaw tight. She knew he was scared, but she also knew the doll wasn't done. She could feel it even now, like a small weight in her lungs each time she drew a breath. They checked into a different hotel near the edge of town. As her father showered, Clara scrolled through her phone again. She replayed the video she'd taken the night the doll whispered. For the 100th time, she saw only static and her own frightened face. But then, near the end, just before the clip cut off, she noticed something she'd missed. A faint reflection in the window behind her. A pale face with gray eyes staring in from the darkness. She dropped the phone, heart hammering. When she bent to pick it up, she saw something under the hotel bed. A small, pale hand. She screamed. Her father burst out of the bathroom, dripping wet. What? What is it? She pointed under the bed, shaking. But when he looked, there was nothing. No hand. No doll. He held her shoulders, eyes wild. Clara. Then they both heard it. Soft, steady, impossibly close. Breathing. The sound started as a whisper, like cloth brushing across tile, but within seconds it thickened into a slow, wet draw and release, as though something with lungs far too big was crouched, just out of sight. Clara pressed herself against the hotel wall. Her father dropped to his knees and yanked the bed skirt up. Nothing but carpet. But the breathing continued. It's here, Clara whispered. He shot her a warning glance. Stay back. He opened the closet door. Empty. He checked the bathroom. Nothing. And yet every time they moved, the sound shifted location, as if circling them. Clara's chest tightened with each inhale it took. Her father grabbed his car keys. Get your shoes. We're leaving. Clara didn't move. We can't run anymore. Clara. We have to take it back to the bay. Tonight. He stopped, breath ragged. He knew she was right. His eyes darted to the window. Then we go back. We will end it. Rain lashed the windshield as they sped along the empty highway toward Blackwater Bay. Clara clutched an old duffel bag lined with salt, a makeshift container for the doll she hoped was still in the ashes of their burned-out house. The breathing sound rode with them, faint but steady, as if the back seat were occupied. Her father muttered prayers under his breath, fingers white on the wheel. At one point, Clara dared to look into the rearview mirror. For a second, she saw a child sitting there, hair matted, face blank, eyes the color of the doll's porcelain. Then it was gone. They reached the charred ruins of their house just before midnight. Smoke still hung faintly in the air. They picked their way through blackened beams toward the spot where the doll had burned. There was no ash, no fragments, only a perfectly intact doll sitting upright on the scorched floorboards. Its gray eyes tracked them. Her father's knees buckled. God help us. Clara crouched, heart pounding. She opened the duffel bag and poured more salt in. "We're going to the bay," she said, as if the doll could understand. "We're sending you home." She reached for it, and the doll moved first, tilting its head with a soft click. They didn't dare stay. Her father scooped the doll into the duffel bag, and they ran, breath misting in the cold air. The breathing inside the bag grew louder, almost matching their footsteps. By the time they reached the rocky shore, the tide was high and the waves looked like black teeth chewing at the moonlight. Clara's skin prickled with static, the air heavy as a storm. She dropped to her knees at the edge of the water. "We're giving you back," she shouted over the surf. "You can't have me." The bag trembled. The zipper burst open. The doll climbed out, standing on the rocks like a child risen from a grave. Its mouth opened wider, impossibly wide, and Clara heard her own breath leaving her lungs, pulled toward it. Her father lunged and grabbed the doll, holding it out over the water. "Take me instead!" he shouted. The doll's head snapped toward him. For an instant, its face flickered. A drowned child, eyes rolled back, mouth gaping. The wind howled. Clara scrambled for a jagged piece of driftwood and drove it through the doll's chest. Porcelain cracked. A hiss of air escaped like a final sigh. Then she hurled it into the waves. The water closed over it with a sound like a gasp. Everything went silent. The wind died. Clara collapsed onto the rocks, gasping, her lungs her own again. Her father knelt beside her, trembling. The surf rolled in and out like the slow breathing of some enormous animal. But it was just the tide. The doll did not surface. For weeks afterward, Clara had nightmares of gray eyes watching from beneath the waves, but nothing else came. The house remained burned. The doll never returned. She read every account she could find about barmen and the Soul Keeper dolls. She learned that only 2 had ever been destroyed, both by being returned to deep water. Most simply disappeared from history. Sometimes, standing at the edge of the bay, she thought she heard a soft sigh rising from the depths, but it no longer reached for her. It was not hers anymore. Her father rebuilt their lives in another town. He refused to speak of the doll, but Clara carried the memory as a private scar and a warning. Not everything we invite into our homes is meant to stay. Not everything we discard stays gone. One night, months later, she was walking along the shore at sunset when a little girl passed by, clutching a battered porcelain doll with cracked cheeks. For a moment, Clara's heart stopped, but the doll's eyes were painted blue, not gray. She exhaled. Still, she crossed the street, and from that night forward, whenever she heard a knock after midnight, she never, ever opened the door.
Subscribe for more videos.